The Trek Geeks Podcast Network is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the home for amazing pin collectibles with over 300 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every month.
Stay tuned for a special discount code worth 10% off your next order at fansets.com. Fansets, our pins have character. A crash landing, an ATV, and telepathic plants. Episode 4 is a crazy planet-bound adventure that ends with our crew in peril. What's going to happen next? We'll jump into the runaway and utilize the hold on to your butts grab handles. My name is Mike Bovia, and this is Discovering Trek Prodigy. Thanks for joining us on Discovering Trek, the Star Trek Universe Companion, presented by Fansets. Episode 4 of Star Trek Prodigy puts our crew on their first away mission, and not everything goes right. But we do end up getting to see some redemption for one of our characters who ends up saving another. Speaking of saving the day, my co-host continues to make this show a poignant listening. Without her, it would be just another old man talking about Star Trek on a podcast. She is my progeny. She is Emilie. And Emilie, what's up tonight? You can't find the mute button?
Nope. I'm ready to make fun of you with an audience, as always. And I'm going to have a lot of fun.
All right. Well, instead of chastising me, why don't you tell everyone where they can find us online?
You can follow the show on Twitter at Discovering Trek, and you can find us on Twitter at Trek Legacy and on Instagram with the same handle. You can also find us in Camp Kittimer from time to time. If you'd like to join the conversation there, answer a couple simple questions, and you'll be welcomed in by our admins Haley, Jackie, and Fark. You can subscribe to the podcast by downloading the Trek Geeks mobile app or by searching for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
So as we mentioned on last week's episode, the goal of Discovering Trek Prodigy is to get the viewpoint of the target audience for this show. So this week we have another guest from within that target audience. We welcome Nathan Sherman and his uncle and associate producer on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, Patrick Escudero. And before we talk to both of you, this is Nathan's podcast debut, but he is a big Star Trek fan. So, Nathan, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on how you get into Star Trek?
Yeah, so it was like 2018, and then my uncle decided to show me, I think it was the first movie, new Star 2009 movie, or I think it was the last one, third one. Showed it to me. And I was like, wow, this looks amazing. Like, it was amazing, like how like they escaped and stuff. Like how they found the Franklin. And then I just became a Trek fan. So whenever I go to his house, I pick up 2 model ships and I just play around with them all day, and it entertains me all day. For no reason.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we have Patrick to blame for adding another person to this fandom that continues to grow. I mean, this is a good thing, though. So what are the two of you liking so far about Prodigy?
I just like the overall show. Like, the animation on all the episodes have been great. Like, the plot and stuff has also been great as well.
Yeah, for me, the animation is unbelievable, honestly. And every episode, I find something that just looks beautiful. And it's a great way to get kids into Star Trek because, I think younger viewers, even younger than Emilie and Nathan, really like that big, colorful like palette that this show is presenting. And it just, I don't know, just really beautiful. It's hard to describe it any other way.
Yeah, the word that keeps springing to mind for me is phenomenal. I'm blown away each week when we see something new come out of it. So very cool, very cool. Well, Emilie and I are both definitely fans of the show so far. And hopefully anyone that is listening is as well. But we're going to give you this personal reminder that this episode of Discovering Trek provides spoilers for the Prodigy episode Dreamcatcher. If you have not yet watched Dreamcatcher, head over to Paramount Plus and watch the episode and head back to listen to us. Failure to do so leaves you open to spoilers. So, Em, why don't you start us off with the episode synopsis for Dreamcatcher?
Janeway has been teaching the cadets starship operation after last week's mishap. She then calls them all to the bridge to investigate an M-class planet in the Hirogen star system. Dal objects, but quickly changes his mind when Janeway says she'll report them to Starfleet for not doing their job. Dal, Jankum, Rok, and Zero all go to planet side with the runaway and end up splitting up and end up being seduced by organisms on the planet. Meanwhile, Gwyn has escaped the brig and taken over the Protostar and reported their whereabouts to the diviner. Dal figures out the planet's secret and rescues his crew while Gwyn tries to get the ship off the ground. The Protostar is thrown away from its landing spot as the crew watches helplessly, but Gwyn is able to save Murph from the crashing ship.
All right, so let's throw it the way of our guests to start things off. Patrick, we'll start with you since we had Nathan give us his little quick bio there. So what were your thoughts on this episode, Dreamcatcher?
It's probably my favorite since the premiere, even though there's only technically been 4 episodes, if you count the first one as being a 2-parter. Because I thought there was a lot of character development that happened in this episode. And I like one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the show is how the introduction of Star Trek that, the producers and writers have promised. I see it every episode. And in this one, you get this introduction to an M-class planet, to Starfleet's mission about always, exploring something, new that they come across, and, Janeway being that guide. So that's definitely probably my favorite thing so far throughout the series, is being able to pick out those little bits of Star Trek that the younger viewers are getting introduced to for those that don't know much about it.
Yeah. I've got written down here, like, one of the first things that happened after the credits where Dallas trying to do a captain's log, and it's like, and he right away says, Janeway's trying to teach us about how a ship works, and she says as the captain, I should be doing a log of what everybody's doing, but he can't quite figure out the star date piece, which, hey, you know what, whatever, most of us can't either. As far as we know, it's just numbers that the writers are doing themselves.
Yeah, and I like the it was Jankum Pog, I think, as they're going through that learning sequence where he accidentally fires a torpedo off into nowhere.
Yeah,
like they balance it really nicely between kind of teaching you this techno babble about Star Trek, but then also throwing in some fun elements that kind of will make younger viewers laugh. And of course, since I'm basically a 12-year-old at heart, trapped in an old man's body, I laughed at it as well.
He also shoots himself in the face with a phaser.
Later on, that's
Very
right.
true.
That's right. Stuns himself. How about you, Nathan? What are some of your thoughts from this episode?
I just think it was overall really good. Like the animation of like the planet was very good. Like how like the plant things, I want to call them plant things because I forgot what they're called. Like the
I don't know if they gave him a real name, so I'm good with plant things.
Yeah, I think Janeway called them something, but it was a complicated word, so
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. So the plant things recreated what they were thinking, how his weaknesses and all that, like were his parents and like all the cute animals and stuff. And then she started to get suspicious of it, but she realized that it was just herself, like when there was the animals. So yeah. Also, but I don't like cliffhangers that much. So, but that was the only part. It was that's the only part I didn't like at all.
You and Emilie have no idea what a cliffhanger is until you had to deal with Next Generation season 3 into season 4. Yeah, where I'm just going to leave it at that. But yeah, I do agree. Emilie and I said when we watched this episode, that stinks. We got to wait till next week to find out, where they're going to pick up from here. But that's how we have our interest kept in shows like this. So, bravo to Lisa Schultz Boyd, who wrote this, and making sure that we've got something to come back to next week.
Yeah, I was surprised they did a cliffhanger in episode 4, because everything's kind of been a continuation. We go from episode 1 and 2 directly into like the next scene starts episode 2 and so on. But this was like a true full-blown cliffhanger.
Yeah. It seems like Prodigy is kind of going the way that Strange New Worlds is going to go, where it's not serialized, but this also isn't quite episodic either. But at times it seems like, they have a problem at the beginning, they solve the problem at the end, and there's other pieces that are carrying forward. So, but we'll see. But yeah, this is definitely one of those ones where the problem was not solved by the end. Em, what were your thoughts for Dreamcatcher?
The first thing that I thought when I saw it with Gwyn's arm thing was, that is so cool. And this episode just proved me right on so many more levels, because we've seen it change shape, but the fact that she can summon it with her mind, it's pretty cool. It must have taken a lot of discipline to do that, but that's really cool. And I also put down, also about Gwyn, it's really sad that she knows that the apparition that the planet shows her isn't her father, just because he's acting so nice to her. Like, he's like, let's stay here for a little while longer, and she's just like, you're not my father. It's really sad.
Well, it's like when he calls her by that extended name, Gwendala. It's like when he says that, she's like, my father wouldn't say something like that. That's not right.
And it's also really sad too that she just goes up to him and immediately gets down on one knee. Like,
yeah. That's funny. You and I have that same point, because I had that in my points as well. Also, I am enjoying that while this is definitely different from Lower Decks in that comedy isn't the main point of it, but we're definitely getting those funny parts within it. It seems like Jankum Pog is the comic relief in some cases, like when they're first using their tricorders there, and Zero says that he's already picking up a gas sample, and Pog says guilty. He's the one causing gas. And then when he's in his little dreamland there, and he says, "Oh, I'm gonna, there's nothing wrong with taking just one bite," and he dips his entire helmet in there. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's good for comedy. I will tell you. So last week I talked quite a bit about how Dal is becoming difficult to like as a character.
Definitely.
I kind of feel like he did a little bit better this week in some regards, but he's still only looking out for himself. He goes tearing through in the runaway and leaves everyone else behind. When he gets out and he's exploring, he leaves his communicator in there so no one can get in contact with him. So those were definitely some low points for me. Again, I think I mentioned this last week, I think this is going to be part of his character development, that we have to see him at his worst before we can see him at his best. But the other thing that I took away from this as a down is, I think, Patrick, you mentioned it, that, there are viewers of this show now that are younger than Emilie and Nathan. I thought a couple of the sequences with the plant thingies were a little scary, maybe for some younger viewers.
That's a good point. I actually, when I did my second watch through, I thought that because I wanted to maybe introduce this to Nathan's sister, Morgan, who's 7, but I thought that sequence might have been a little bit too scary because the way the projections they make, and then they turn into that organic plant thing that kind of comes all around them and wraps. It could be a little bit scary for a younger viewer. I definitely agree with that.
I've already asked my sister like so many times. She said, "No, I'm not watching this show because it's Star Trek," and she does not like Star Trek at all.
See, that's
so like even if like there wasn't in there, like she would say no.
We'll fix that someday.
It's funny because I've actually heard some people online who, you know, their kids are always like, nope, Star Trek is mom or dad's thing. They haven't even told their kids that it's Star Trek. And it's perfect because, nope, the first episode does say Star Trek Prodigy at the beginning. But they put it on and the kids don't even realize that it's Star Trek right away until they're like hooked on it. So you may have already messed it up a little bit for your sister there and saying that it's Star Trek. So maybe if you're just watching it one day and she walks in the room, she won't even realize what it is.
I think Morgan sees Star Trek as kind of Nathan and Uncle Pat's thing.
As she doesn't like sci-fi, just likes YouTube. That's all she watches 24/7. When I'm at school, it's YouTube. That's it.
That's like the thing now.
Yeah. Makes me feel pretty old every day.
Library computer, data being received.
So how about callbacks for this episode, or things that we might have recognized in coming from other iterations of Star Trek in the past? So Em, I'm going to start with you on this one. What were some of the things that you noticed coming from older Star Trek series?
I kind of forgot about it when we first watched it, so I had to jot one thing down that I remembered. The Hirogen system, from Voyager. So that's all I noticed. I really forgot about it.
Okay. Hey, no problem. This was actually, I thought, one of the episodes that kind of had the fewest things in it going back to other Star Treks. So, Nathan, I'll call on you. Is there anything that you found from this that you have seen from other Star Treks you've seen before?
I would say Janeway, but that's just obvious. So no, I haven't seen anything at all. My uncle will see like 1,000 things probably, to be honest, because he like whenever we watch an episode, it's like, hey, there's something from the past, like from Next Generation.
Oh, getting caught up on my nephew on a podcast.
No. Like you find it all the time. Like
you're also right about this. I found a number of things in this that
exactly
that were kind of subtle. Wow. Awesome. Sentences I would have never thought I'd say in 2021. Nephew calling me out on Star Trek podcast.
Yep.
So yeah, the Hirogen system, Voyager, obviously. The one that I love, actually there were two that I love the most. The tricorder sounds, even though the design of the tricorder was different, newer, the sounds were the same as TNG and Voyager and DS9, and I love that. Same with the phaser. The phaser looked different, but the sound was pretty much exactly the same. The Runaway was definitely a reference to the Argo from Star Trek Nemesis, and that was amazing. And the one other thing that I thought was pretty subtle is when Janeway says holograms can't leave the ship. My first thought was, can we get this hologram a mobile emitter like the Doctor from Voyager had?
Emilie said the same thing. She's like, what about mobile emitters? It was 29th century technology, so they would have had to find a way to replicate it between when Voyager came back and when the Protostar went out. So,
true.
Honestly, I don't remember what it's called all of a sudden. The vehicle, what's it called?
The Runaway.
Yeah, the Runaway. I don't know how many people that are listening or any of you watch Lost in Space, but it reminded me of the rover from that. So,
the new Lost in Space.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I do have a couple of things. I actually had a few things that you guys mentioned. The Hirogen. I think we talked about M-Class Planet earlier. The tricorder sounds. It's very subtle, but when Gwyn summons her bracelet thing and it liquefies, it actually goes down into a Jeffries tube. So we noticed the Jeffries tube in the episode. And This is a real deep cut. When the Protostar is landing on the planet, the whole bridge is lit up in blue for blue alert, like Voyager had when it would land. So blue alert. I mentioned that to Emilie, and she couldn't remember. She did not remember that at all. And then when I talked about it I think it was first in the 37s and then in basics when they landed the blue alert on both of those. So there you go.
I did not remember the blue alert thing. That is a deep, deep cut there. I'm like, man, bravo on that one.
There you go.
The Jeffries tube. Yeah, definitely obvious because you see it pretty distinctively. Like it looks like a Jeffries tube now that I'm thinking about it in my head. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't catch that one either.
I didn't catch it until I rewatched it today. It's a very quick cut because it liquefies and falls through the floor, and then it's maybe a second that it's on screen, but I was like, "Ooh, hey, Jeffries tube, pretty cool."
Doesn't every ship have a Jeffries tube though?
It does.
Yeah. So why is that a callback if it's just like on every single ship?
Because we haven't seen it in Prodigy yet.
Well,
smart kid.
Maybe someday they'll show a fire and somebody trapped in it, one with a plate.
And then you can say that it's a callback to a previous episode.
A lot of Voyager references. Basically, most of these are Voyager references because it's basically aimed at Voyager.
Yeah.
Nathan hasn't seen a lot of Voyager, unfortunately.
No, I've not seen a lot of Voyager at all.
And I really hadn't until last year myself, so.
That's fine. It's actually one of the first ones that I showed Emilie. Basically because I thought it would be something that she would be interested in. And then, the whole having a girl and it's a female captain, I thought it would be a good like, oh, hey, it's a female captain. I'll watch it because I know she doesn't like Kirk that much. So I thought, well, it's a better draw if it's a female captain for you.
You're right. I don't like Kirk.
I know you don't. I think it's a thing about your age group.
Please specify how you would like to proceed, sir.
So in this portion of the program, our Starfleet Academy portion, we talk about what Star Trek has always aimed to do over the course of its 55-year history, and that is to try and teach the audience something about itself. And so now Prodigy is doing that with the next generation of its viewers. So let's see. I think everyone has had a turn at going first, so I will pose this next one to Nathan to start off. So in your opinion, Nathan, is there something that you saw in this episode that you thought it was trying to teach the audience something, whether it be for yourself as the younger generation or for your uncle as the older generation?
I didn't think of anything. I just thought like anything is possible at any age because like you know how like they're like doing stuff on the planet and stuff like when they're young. Like it's just showing like anything is possible if you think about it. And it's not like a limited age group, it's just any age you can do it.
Yeah. And Pat, I can say that because if I remember correctly, you and I are like the same age. So, if I call myself out as old, then I gotta pass the buck as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely right there with you.
So what about you? Is there something that you found within this that you thought was a teaching moment?
Yeah, I definitely thought when they all leave the ship and everybody splits up, it's kind of, I think, trying to convey the idea of it's better to work as a team than to split up. Safety in numbers, sticking together. Everybody's off doing their own thing. And it works in this episode because you get a little character development from each person since you see a little bit of their inner thoughts via what this organism thing is doing and showing them. But I think it was trying to tell us like, hey, stick together, help each other out. That way, if there is trouble, you're going to be able to get out of it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I've got some of those same exact things written down in my notes. Rok-Tahk, I think, was the first one when Dal peeled out of there in the runaway. She goes, "I thought we were going to explore together," and if they had, like you said, it would have helped them to solve the problem a little bit quicker. And then, potentially they might not have gotten stuck in the situations that the four of them got stuck in, and in this case, it actually works out that Dal was able to figure it out so quickly and rescue everybody else. Em, what about you? I know you had something different from that.
Well, are you sure that Dal didn't figure it out quicker?
All right, smarty pants, tell us what you're so smart about.
Well, the lesson that I took from it, with the way that the planet presented their thoughts right to them and their hopes and desires, was that just because you want something, that doesn't mean you could take it. It could hurt people around you, or it could hurt yourself. And it can be really dangerous to take something that you want. But for that reason, it could drive you apart from other people in your life, or it could sometimes block connections from yourself in some way. So
she's upstaging me once again. She makes fun of me, and then she sounds smarter than me. One of these days, she's just going to be doing her own podcast, and I'm not even going to bother helping her anymore.
Really not that hard to sound smarter than you.
And the sad part about all of this is the listeners are now expecting to hear it in the show, so I can't even cut that out. I got to leave it in. All right, Em. You know what? I do want to talk about your point a little bit, because I did instead of just, busting your chops about it, I did really appreciate that point when you mentioned it to me when we watched it, because I thought of the saying, look before you leap. And I've given so much praise over the last couple episodes to Rok-Tahk, because she's been such a strong character. And I don't want to say she kind of stepped back from that this week, because she definitely didn't. This week, she really acted the age that she's supposed to be on this, instead of being, this like presence that kind of binds everybody together. She's this young girl that really likes animals, and so like she gets swept up in that right away. And it took them like throwing the rock at her head to get her to come out of it. And it wouldn't have taken any more than what we see at the end of the episode, where she literally just stands up and everything breaks off of her. But, she is acting her age here. And so, yeah, just not going, like you said, I'm not going after everything that you want.
I hate to say this. Actually, that's a lie. I don't hate to say this, but they actually threw a tricorder at her, not a rock.
Did they?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'll have to rewatch it. I both times I watched it, I thought it was a rock. So
it's rectangular, so I think it's a I mean, they could have just found a thin rectangular rock, but I don't know.
No idea.
It also looked kind of purple, which is why I say that.
Okay. Hey, I will bow to the wisdom that everyone says you have.
It was the cool new tricorder with the purple stripe on the side.
Oh my God. Here we go. Now she's calling back to Lower Decks.
X reference. I like it. Yeah, I thought it was a rock too, but I don't know. We're getting older, Mike. It could be the eyes.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
I just pay attention to the big details. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm just going with the
That's right. The generations have to stick together. I'd like to take a moment to talk about Fansets, the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Did you know that it's been 5 years since Fansets has been providing us with top-notch merchandise? It's hard to believe, but in that time, they've been providing us with offerings for all types of fandoms, including Scooby-Doo, DC Comics, Batman 66, Harry Potter, and Rick and Morty.
And we've been talking about the last few weeks that it looks like Prodigy is setting itself up for a lot of awesome pin ideas for the Fansets team. Well, one of the things we keep talking about is the cool Delta that Janeway has. And then this week we see it on the rest of the team on their away mission. But also happening this week, Fansets dropped one of the most anticipated Deltas around, that being the Wrath of Khan Delta badge. Right now, you can go to fansets.com and you can pick up the Wrath of Khan Delta badge in either magnetic or pin form, along with all of their other awesome Deltas Done Right collection. Go to fansets.com, check that out, and the over 300 officially licensed Star Trek pins, including that Delta collection, as well as micro crew pins, which we can't wait to see the Prodigy crew show up in that, episode pins, and many other great designs. So go to fansets.com and put a whole bunch of pins in your cart.
As a listener to the show, you can receive 10% off your next order from Fansets by using the code DiscoveringTrek at checkout. And remember that you receive free shipping in the U.S. on orders $30 or more.
Fansets. Our pins have character. And we thank Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. So now we'll transition into our medals section, the Christopher Pike Medal of Honor. So Emilie, why don't you lead this one off for us? And we're going to cover something from this, at least one thing from this week's episode that you would like to nominate for an award.
You know, I'm always going to mention the art, but not just the art. The animation, I think they did an amazing job, as always. I feel like it must have been so difficult to do the vines that were attached to the ship and, you know, animating it, controlling Janeway and having it not just stand still on Dal's parents, but if you were looking close enough, you could see that they were slowly moving into the ground. And I think that was it's very detailed, and I really like that. And I also never realized this before, but I love the intro. It has all of the characters in it, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you got to look really closely for that, but
yeah,
there's a little bit of each character woven throughout that intro sequence. All right, Patrick, what are your medals of honor this week?
Okay. So this goes back to what you were talking about with Dal and kind of being not the easiest character to like after these first couple of episodes. And I completely agree with that. But by the end of this episode, he did something that I thought was a really good character development. And I wanted to nominate that for this week. When he realizes what's going on, he kind of figures everything out, and which I thought was pretty smart of him. Like he's a pretty intelligent kid when he's not kind of acting very selfish. But he gets into the runaway and he goes off. But instead of going back to the ship, which I think would have been in character for him to try to just get back to like safety because he doesn't know what's going on over at the ship with Gwyn at this point, he goes and tries to find the other characters. He goes right off to find who does he find first? He finds Zero, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought that was growth for him because it was not a selfish thing to do. It was like something rather than just going, oh, I'm going to save myself and get back to the ship. He, I guess he sees on the display that Zero's over there. He's like, I got to go get Zero. And then they go and get, each of the other characters on the way back. So for me, that was definitely a nice character development for him because I really haven't been the biggest Dal fan to this point, which seems like a very obvious choice by the writers to make him that way right now, because they've mentioned prior to the series about it being about character growth and learning to work together. So we don't like, I think maybe some kids wouldn't get subtleties behind somebody being selfish, but maybe not showing it. So you have to be kind of overt with that. And he's definitely like, you see him being the selfish, only cares about himself, is only, has grown up in solitude. Because, in the first episode, of course, they didn't have translators at the mining colony, so they couldn't really communicate with each other. So it's going to take a lot for him to learn to be kind of a better person. And I think that was a big first step for him, was to go and try to save the others, figuring that they were probably in similar danger.
I feel like the main character is supposed to be the person that you like the most, because they're the captain and they're responsible for the entire crew. And, they have this kind of personality that you're just drawn to. But I'm not going to lie, I don't 100% know if I would care if Dal got caught by the Diviner.
Well, and that's kind of where they've put him at this point. Like I said, I feel like it's one of those things where we need to see the worst of him so that we can see how he's going to grow into being a leader. So did you have anything else that you wanted to nominate this week, Patrick?
One that I don't know if it really deserves a full Medal of Honor, but Kate Mulgrew's performance as the kind of organism fake Janeway that was a little bit more sinister, a little bit more evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
She ate those scenes up, because she transitioned from being our helpful guide to being that kind of evil representation of the organism. And I thought that was just, I could always go with the animation. That's probably always going to be on my list for amazing things about this episode that deserves a medal. But Kate Mulgrew this week with that voice acting as the evil organism was just top-notch stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. That was really cool. All right, Nathan, you're up. What do you have for medals this week?
So I have to talk about the animation and art, because it's there's a lot of details with the art and animation, on the planet with all the vines, the engine on the planet with the ship on the planet with the landing gear down, the runaway too, and the animals as well. It's a lot of art and animation that is really cool. Some small details too, Emilie said, the people, his parents sinking into the ground very slowly.
Yeah, I gotta say that. I said it before, I'll say it again. This animation has been phenomenal. You're almost waiting for the next big thing all the time now.
Saturday morning cartoons didn't look like this when I was a kid.
No. Yeah. Anything else you're awarding, Nathan?
Yeah, the character development from Dal. How he said, he was a jerk. He was a jerk most of the time, but when everybody was on the planet, was when the ship was flying away and the vines were just taking it. He doesn't go to the ship at all. He just saves the people first, and then now they're stuck on there. But could have been Dal leaving with the diviner's daughter, Gwyn, I think.
Yep, I like it. Good stuff.
The one thing is, I feel like if Dal had chosen to be selfish and go back to the ship, we wouldn't be in the situation that we were in now, because he probably would have caught Gwyn and might have been able to handle her and take back the ship. And then the ship wouldn't have been destroyed. It's just a possibility, and
we don't know that the ship is destroyed yet. We don't know that the ship is destroyed.
It was smoking, and
that could just be dust.
It crashed from in the air.
So did Gwyn. Gwyn's shuttle crashed. We saw a big puff of smoke.
Yeah, wasn't the ship destroyed?
No, it was wrapped up in the vines.
Also, the Janeway still on the ship, she was also evil. How she changed so it won't serve Dal, but it's Gwyn. So she doesn't argue with Gwyn at all. So Gwyn has somebody else on her side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was able to reprogram her. Yep.
Yeah, Gwyn had quite the proficiency being a starship engineer there. She was showing a little Geordi, little Torres, hot wiring things, and that was interesting. I'm hoping to learn more about her background on that kind of stuff.
Well, as Nathan and Emilie both did, and I believe Patrick did as well, this animation, You can't beat it. I have to give an award to that as well, because especially, I'm not looking even at the detail that Nathan, you and Emilie did with the vines and everything like that. When they first blow the hatch and go outside the ship, and you see the landscape and the mountains in the background and the rings of the moon and all of that. I mean, it is just such immense detail. I think of the detail that we saw in the landscape in Picard on Nepenthe. And I'm like, man, that was live action. And of course they had to do some CG for that because, you can't put some of those things into real live action because it was fake. But then just to see an entirely computer generated show, and it looked so real, like it was an actual set, I thought was incredible.
Think 3D modeling.
Yeah. So my next one goes to The Runaway. Pretty awesome design. The only thing I'll say is they got to have more than 4 chairs, man. You got to be able to take more than 4 people on an away mission with that thing. And especially into the design of The Runaway that they put in the hold on to your butts grab handles. Love it. And my final Medal of Honor goes to, and we've already just talked about her a little bit here, Ella Purnell, or Gwyn. A couple of things. First off, like we said, the way she's able to quickly take the ship over, and it's not like in this nefarious way. She just she knows how everything works. And she makes the point that, her father had been teaching her all of these things for years. She didn't realize why. And now she does, that it was all for this. And, she just is able to do everything she needs to do right there to get Protostar under her control. But then the other piece that I definitely don't think is going under the radar, her saving of Murph at the end, getting him off the ship before it crashes. That's like my touching moment of the week, is her saving Murph and clutching onto him at the end. But also, one other thing that I want to point out from that scene is, going back to my favorite character, Rok-Tahk, her concern that Gwyn is hurt. You hear the concern in her voice when they get there, that, making sure that she's okay. But yeah, Ella Purnell, definitely a great job this week, because she's finally able to do something now that she's escaped from the brig.
I have to say, though, I disagree that I forget its name again. The ship, not the ship.
Runaway.
Yes, the Runaway. I disagree that you think that it needs to have more seats. On an away mission, you need 4 people. You need the doctor, you need the first officer, you need the captain, and then you need a red shirt to kill off. Okay, that's everybody that you need. That's 4 people.
But I'm saying 2 red shirts at least. We're
he can
living
ride on the roof. That's how he'll die.
We're living in the kids in sports generation now. You have to have that 3rd row of seating. All right, let's take our transwarp conduit to the Delta Quadrant. So, based on this week's episode and the previous storylines that we've seen happen, what do you think could happen next week or later this season? Nathan, we'll go with you first.
All right, I think it's obvious because, it ended on a cliffhanger. So I think they'll just try to explore the planet, see salvage, see if anybody else who's actually not hostile like the plant things are not like controlled by the plant things are there and like they can help out and maybe they'll find somebody in next week. So hopefully, yeah.
Oh, I like that. I had not even thought of that. That's an awesome idea. Cool. Emilie, what about you?
I hadn't thought of that either, and I think that is an interesting point. The scanners read no life signs, but then the vines talk to them, and Janeway says that she's a representative. So the planet might just be jamming the sensors somehow. So that's a good point. But I think that, obviously they're going to need to work together to fix the Protostar if it's broken, which you say that it might not be, but I disagree with you forever and always. They're going to probably have to work together to fix that. And I feel like it's going to be difficult, especially with Gwyn, because, she's escaped the brig. There's no brig to put her in now, if the ship is damaged. And so all of the stuff that they have to keep her locked up in some sort of way is on the ship. And, she's going to have to help them and they're going to have to help her. And she's probably one of the most, educated people there in terms of ships and stuff and such. And I feel like she might end up trying to slow them down just a little bit to help the diviner, but I don't know that for sure. So that's it.
That was a lot, but really good. Thanks. All right, Patrick, how about you? What are your thoughts as to what could happen?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see Gwyn work with the others, maybe instead of against them. But at the same time, Emilie makes a good point. Gwyn is still not on board with what they're doing, and she still has this loyalty to her father. So I could see her definitely trying to slow them down, whether it's repairing the ship or, as Nathan mentioned, trying to find some other kind of life form on the planet that could help them. I'd like to think she's going to continue to grow and help them and help all of them get off the planet. But there could always be a nefarious idea in her head just waiting to come out because, as Emilie said, she is kind of the smart one. She knows all the things about starships, and we've already seen that. So it'll be interesting to see how they resolve the cliffhanger and whether Gwyn kind of ends up being still against them, quote unquote, or with them. And I did like some of the other stuff, going further down for the rest of the season where, Dal has been acting very tough, but then the organism shows him his parents, which kind of makes you realize that, hey, he has an interest in knowing more about them, even though he tries to pretend he doesn't, he's a loner and he only worries about himself.
He's still just a kid too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Jacob Pog even mentions a Tellar sleeper ship, which was kind of a throwaway line. But I thought that was interesting because he is a Tellarite, and is that how he got to the Delta Quadrant? And was he on that ship with his parents, and that they got separated? So nice. It's nice that we're getting these little bits, even just in one line, that it gives us some more insight into the backgrounds of these characters that hopefully we learn more about, in future episodes.
Yeah, and I did want to comment on something that Emilie said about they could have something that's blocking their sensors, and I was thinking to myself, well, what if I created I've got this kid that's like spouting technobabble now, my thought, and it's really not too much of a stretch, I don't think. I am thinking that since Gwyn sent out the message to the diviner, next week, he is going to take control of the Protostar. And that episode 5 is going to end on another cliffhanger. So that we're left trying to figure out how everyone is able to escape. And why do I think it's going to be a cliffhanger?
This week, we learned that the length of Season 1 of Prodigy is going to be 20 episodes long, but that after Episode 5, Prodigy will be on hiatus until January 6th and run through Episode 10 on February 10th. Then a second break will happen with Episodes 11 through 20 coming out late in 2022.
So, our cliffhanger, I'm thinking, is going to make us all wait the 6 weeks until January for us to figure out what's going to be happening with our Prodigy crew. But we will have to wait until next week to see how that goes on. So, Patrick, Nathan, we are so thrilled that the two of you were able to join us this evening and talk about Dreamcatcher. And Nathan, I am sure at 12 you are not on the social medias because I don't let Emilie do that. But Patrick, I know, is out there. So Patrick, where can people get in touch with you online and potentially share their thoughts on Nathan's thoughts so that you can pass them on to him?
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at PatrickE34. Always happy to talk Trek. And if you have any comments for me or Nathan, I will definitely pass them along.
Nathan, again, thank you so much for joining us. It was great. Even though you are an Eagles fan, we did welcome you on the show with open arms.
Don't forget that you can support Discovering Trek and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by subscribing to bonus content on Patreon. Get access to unedited audio of all our podcasts and a lot of other perks. If you'd like to support this and the other member podcasts of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, beam on over to patreon.com/TrekGeeks, where subscriptions start as low as $2 a month.
And for more great Star Trek discussion, check out the aforementioned member podcasts on the network. In addition to Discovering Trek, there is Trek Geeks, Rewind, Politrex, 5-Year Mission, Deep Space Pride, Infinite Trek, The Divine Treasury, Sci-Fi Sisters, and the newest shows, Drawn to Trek, Science Station 2, and With the First Link. You can find all these shows and where to listen online at trekgeeks.com/listen or by downloading the Trek Geeks mobile app.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network. No one talks Trek like we do.
Episode 4 of Prodigy stranded us on a Class M planet. Will we get off of it in the next episode? Join us again next week as we welcome a mother of 3 children who are watching Prodigy with her, Jen Tiff from Trek Core, on Discovering Trek Prodigy. Until then, never stop discovering.
Music for Discovering Trek is provided by 5-Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. Discovering Trek is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.